Now to Syria, where opposition forces say they have entered Aleppo after rebels launch a surprise offensive in the government-controlled city for the first time in years. A statement by a newly formed rebel umbrella coalition says clashes with Syrian forces intensified overnight into Friday morning. The rebels and Bashar al-Assad's regime had agreed to a ceasefire mediated by Russia and Turkey in March 2020. CNN's senior international correspondent Ben Wiedemann has covered Syria extensively over the course of his career. He joins us now to give us some perspective on the latest development. Ben, this is the first major escalation in Syria in around 7 years. Rebels claiming to have taken control of Aleppo's western countryside. What is the latest?
Yes, what we're hearing from Aleppo is they've now entered the new Aleppo neighborhood as well as the Hamdaniya neighborhood on the western side of the city. This comes after they launched this sort of coalition of rebel groups led by Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, which is a rebel group that at one point was affiliated with Al-Qaeda. But they launched this lightning offensive on Wednesday, and since then they've taken, according to them, 63 villages to the west of Aleppo, which of course is Syria's second largest city. And they say they have now entered the western edge of the city. This is an offensive that comes after keeping in mind, of course, that the rebels lost control of most of Aleppo back in 2016. And there's been basically a stalemate since March of 2020 when Russia and Turkey worked out a ceasefire agreement for the northern part of of Syria. Now, there have been clashes among the rebel groups themselves, but it appears that they've put their differences behind, perhaps to exploit the fact that, for instance, Hezbollah, which was a major backer of the regime of Bashar al-Assad, essentially pulled out of Syria starting in October of last year when they focused their fire on Israel. And of course, other backers of the Syrian regime, for instance, Iran has been distracted by its involvement in hostile activities with Israel, and Russia has been distracted by its war in Ukraine. And therefore, perhaps these rebel groups are seeing this as a golden opportunity to target a weakened Syrian regime, a regime that doesn't have the kind of backing that it enjoyed going back to, for instance, 2015, when the Russians became directly involved in bolstering the regime of Bashar al-Assad. So certainly this does represent a dramatic change on the ground in an area where the Syrian regime was starting to feel fairly confident. They've been trying to rebuild parts of old Aleppo that were severely damaged in the civil war that's been going on there since 2012. But it does appear that the regime has been taken by surprise by this rebel offensive. Eleni?
Indeed. I mean, a huge surprise, and they're calling it a shock offensive. What is their aim, Ben? And as you say, they're feeling emboldened now that Hezbollah and Iran are distracted with their own worries, specifically in what we're seeing in Lebanon. So what is their aim right now?
Well, what they've said, this Military Operations Command, which is the name of this umbrella for this coalition of rebel groups, they said that their aim was to stop Russian and Syrian regime forces from targeting Idlib province and parts of western Aleppo province that are under the rebel control, that they've been targeted by Russian and regime artillery and airstrikes. So they say that the purpose was to put an end to those strikes, but clearly they see that the regime is feeling exposed, that it doesn't have the kind of backing that it had until quite recently, and clearly they're seeing that this is an opportunity to go after, to try to retake Aleppo, which of course, keep in mind, it's not only the second largest city in Syria, it really is the industrial heartland rather the industrial sort of center of Syria. And it would be a major achievement for them to retake that city. And after a period when it was thought that the opposition was essentially isolated in Idlib province, and the regime was slowly regaining control of some of the country. Keep in mind, of course, that Syria has, in addition to the rebels, there's a Turkish military presence, an American military presence, a Russian military presence. Basically, the country is cut up in pieces, and the regime's control at the best of times has been tenuous in many parts of the country.
Ben Wiedemann, always great to see you. Thank you so much.